Hi, my name is Julia Rothenberg. I'm an associate professor of sociology in the social sciences department here at Queensborough Community College. I worked on a show of the work of the artist Peter Pacheco, who we're going to talk to today. This show was on view in the gallery at Queensborough Community College the summer of 2019. It was called Between Flesh and Brick. So we're going to catch up with Peter.
Hi, Julia.
I'd like to thank you, first of all, for doing this interview with us. A lot has happened since your show at the QCC Gallery in the summer of 2019. I'd like to talk about some of these events, some of the things that have happened in the meantime, and how they've impacted your life, your work, and especially your artwork. Can you talk a little bit about the first few months of the pandemic here in New York City? As a nurse, you had a profoundly intimate experience of sickness and death. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about how that was for you?
All right. So I work in a long-term care facility that's part of the city hospital system, and we were not initially hit immediately by the first wave of people getting sick. But as they were stabilized in the acute care facilities, they were then sent up onto us. So we had designated one floor to be the kind of intake unit for all our admissions to the facility, where we screened all the patients. And these were both patients with a history of being positive for COVID and not being positive, but we had to rule it out. Unfortunately, yes, as a lot of people probably know, I mean, even after being discharged from acute care facilities, it still sometimes flares up and patients crash. And I was lucky enough to be asked to open the second of those units with another one of my colleagues. It was a very different experience. Normally, when I work as a nurse, I get very close to people very, very quickly. But in this situation, there was an extra layer of isolation because of all the PPE everybody had to be wearing.
Okay. Were you able to make any art during this initial wave of COVID?
Yes, but not as much as I normally am, because I also had to do a couple of double shifts because we had staff that was calling in sick, and because of some renovation in our house here at home, I also had to move my studio. But so I was drawing more than painting, which actually I think was a very good thing for me to get back to. And why, as I said, I mean, I haven't been getting a lot of painting done, but I've done a fair amount of drawing.
So can you talk about some of those drawings and maybe tell us a little bit about what you were thinking?
If I was thinking.
What you were thinking, not if.
What I was thinking.
What you were thinking.
Well, I think I was thinking about the last paintings that I've been working on, and maybe I remember at one point we talked about that it was kind of in some ways interesting that a lot of some of the themes in my paintings is about social isolation and distance between people, which I think became even more, more pronounced because of a pandemic and the fact that everybody has to quarantine to some degree. So I think, for instance, the fact that I don't have any full figures in any of my painting, except for that painting that I call the Red Balloon, but that figure is turned away from you, so you're not really connected with that figure or that person the same way that you would be if the person is facing you, right? The eyes that I have in some of my painting is a direct gaze, but it is still what do you call it? Disembodied from the rest of the figure. And I think, all of these paintings obviously are post or pre-pandemic. The ones that the drawings that I've been working on so the one that I showed you was this one, which might be a little difficult to see, but of a person taking a shower. And there's a window with a plane in the background, which to me gives me associations to 9/11, which is another big social disaster that New York has experienced while I've been here.
In addition to the public health drama that took place, that it's still taking place, how does the social, political, and economic dimensions or implications of the pandemic, how have they influenced you or impacted you? And especially if you can say something about how that impact might find its way into your work in the future or already has.
Well, I think that, in some ways, it's been discouraging because I think it's very, very difficult with, not impossible, but it's a little difficult to have a direct impact of the social political situation with paintings alone. I think that there has to be it has to be followed by a concrete political activism in some way.
How have you been impacted sort of personally in terms of your consciousness, in terms of your political consciousness, as a healthcare worker, as a resident in this country, by the things that have taken place? And how do you imagine that impact working its way into your work? So later on, we can talk more about the role of art more generally in terms of social.
Okay, so obviously I see a lot of, as we're sliding into fascism, I obviously see a lot of parallels to the Weimar Republic. This New York especially has been one of the sexually freest places in the world, and there's been a lot of, all the way back from the 70s, a lot of artistic experimentation, and so I've definitely been thinking a lot about the painters in Germany before Second World War and before the Nazis took over, which is, I don't know that that's necessarily going to have a direct influence on the way I paint or what I do, but it is, it's a group of painters that have always interested me and which had a direct influence on abstract expressionism in New York.
Can you mention a couple of painters or paintings specifically, or artists? I mean, I can guess who you're getting at, but
Well, Kirchner, Otto Dix, Nolde, who was, he's a very dicey fellow because of his politics. I mean, I'm not quite sure about those. In the beginning, he was very sympathetic to the Nazi ideology, and later he even moved to Denmark, South Denmark at one point. But those painters were very influential on Danish art, the Cobra painters, and as I said, also a direct line to the abstract expressionists in America. Also, given all the painters who moved from, or artists that moved from Europe at that time.
Although it's interesting, if I just might add that what the influence of these European painters in the U.S. in New York evolved into what is best known as, as the kind of, moment of the explosion of American art is abstract expressionism. So it's abstract art. Whereas, it's interesting that so many of the artists who influenced the abstract expressionists really were figurative political artists, both from the American schools and also from the the German and European expressionists. So that's kind of interesting that you're bringing that up now. That earlier work, last time we talked, you talked about Cobra, which is less directly political, less kind of narrative. But it's interesting that you've had an interest in this more sort of illustrational political work, and how that kind of dovetails with abstraction. Now that we've had a rest from the horrible wave that hit us in the spring, are you finding more time to work?
Yes, I am, but it took me a while. I mean, I had a couple of days off and I wasn't really able to do anything until I had to go back to work, which is how always is. But right now, I definitely have a lot of ideas that I want to see what they look like on canvas, and I will have some more time right now, but I'm afraid that it'll probably be cut off at one point when the second wave hits us, which I think it probably will. Hopefully not. We'll see.
I'd like you to discuss work that you've produced, but also your thinking process about the work and your plans for future work. That's kind of what you just talked about, but maybe you could say something a little bit more specifically about some of your ideas that you are working with at this moment. I see there's a painting in the background, for example.
Yeah, there's a painting in the background that's, but that is, I mean, it's a painting that I've gone back to, because I never finished it, which is about a pair of penguins and a set of feet, or legs, more likely. And I had, but that's unfortunately, that's in the basement. I had another painting of a crucified penguin, which when I first started these, I mean, there's been all these stuff directly related to it's actually not related to the pandemic at all, but you asked me. So there came out a lot of news about penguins in captivity that formed homosexual couples and adopted stray eggs and raised baby penguins. So that is kind of the seed of those paintings. So while it's not directly about homosexual paintings, that is where that germinated from. So right now I've been having this image also of a person with a man with a trench coat and an umbrella that is surrounded in smoke. Which I don't know what that's going to develop into, but
Looking ahead through the election and further, what are you most afraid of? And what gives you hope? Wait, let me finish the question because it has a couple more clauses in it. How do you imagine responding to the social tumult within which we are likely to be embroiled in your work, if at all, in your work?
I don't know. I mean, since I'm drawing a lot right now, I'm thinking maybe I mean, I told you I've also been looking at Chinese propaganda posters from...
You didn't mention that in the interview.
Huh?
You haven't mentioned that yet, but...
No, but no, I haven't mentioned that yet. But that's another thing I've been looking at. Just because I like the chunkiness of the figures, the very and the graphic qualities that those posters have, and I think that it is it's kind of a naive, romanticized longing for a simpler way. I mean, politics are so complicated now, and propaganda is so complicated now, and it is so insidious. Where propaganda in those days was far more direct and easy to counter. I mean, you had Nazi propaganda on one side, and then you have communist propaganda, socialist propaganda on the other side, and it was just not that those were the times. But what do I fear most? I fear that, well, obviously that America becomes a fully fascist country. Which I think is a real threat in the current environment. And I don't think, I think right now, I mean, obviously, I think there needs to be a change in the White House, but I do not think that if there are not fundamental changes in America, I don't think that that threat is going to go away.
Even with a change in the White House?
No, I don't think so. I think that is, I mean, I don't understand that people can really think that that alone is going to be enough.
Is there anything that gives you hope in any of the current social movements?
Yeah, I mean, it does give me hope that I think most people, I mean, a thing which, I mean, obviously is something that's close to me is healthcare. And I think the fact that a great percentage of Americans when asked and explained about universal healthcare and what that is, are not only sympathetic to that, but are getting actively involved in making that happen. And I think ultimately, I think that is one of the things that does have to happen for America in order for us to become a more cohesive society. If we can't take care of each other, then you don't have a society.
That's right, and it kind of, it's an interesting contrast with the theme of isolation and, you know, the social isolation that this pandemic has forced on us all a kind of a it's sort of a frightening, kind of exaggerates the isolation, alienation, and individualism that these are some of the flaws of our social fabric, some of the big problems with our, with our social contract where it stands right now. So I want to bring us back to a question that you kind of started answering at the beginning about the relationship between art and politics, and I'm going to bring it into the, for reference, the current debate or the current controversies about the Philip Guston show, which has been postponed. You clearly have been influenced by Guston in your approach to using the figure. Guston, although he was an accomplished abstract artist, chose to create figurative work that was both formally innovative and socially relevant. At times, he commented rather bluntly on the ugliness he saw around him in American society. What do you think of the decision to postpone his show? And do you think of your own work in terms of social critique?
Well, I mean, the postponement of the Philip Guston show, I think, is shameful, and I think it's cowardly. But I mean, I think it's symptomatic of America's refusal to look at its own history squarely in the face. And I think that's what he was doing when he was painting the KKK cartoon figures in his paintings. I know that, Guston was Jewish. He grew up in LA, and his daughter mentioned in an interview that he witnessed these big Klan rallies and marches in California, and I just don't think America. America has been very, very good at sweeping all its ugliness under the carpet. That's not. I talk with my colleagues at work, and it seems like slavery is only given perfunctory coverage in the history classes and history books. And I just, as an outsider or coming from outside, I just find that mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. So is part of your project to, even if indirectly, provide some kind of, illumination of, uncomfortable social facts?
I don't know that I can do that as a... I've lived here for 25 years now. So obviously I'm part of the society, and I'm embroiled in all the problems. I don't know how I can do that, other than continuing to make images of that has some kind of human dimension. I think one of the things that you definitely learn when you work with people in hospitals is that once you're sick and you're in a hospital bed and you're cut open or whatever happens to you, then the existential problems are the same for everybody.
Were you always a figurative painter?
No, I started as an abstract painter, I think. I've always drawn from nature, but no, I started as an abstract painter when I was. Let me put it differently. The paintings I painted when I was very young and going forward were almost always abstract. The paintings I painted in school were abstract. The drawings were, you know, I mean, silly teenage drawings with daggers and skulls and what have you that boys do at that age. But the paintings were always abstract.
I'm sorry, I'm veering off the script, and I'd be happy to skip the last question in order to get an answer to this question, but I'm curious at if you remember a moment, or was it more of a gradual evolution, what made you move from abstract painting, which clearly, abstraction has been a very important influence in your work, and that one can still see that formally. But at what point did you make that turn, and do you remember why?
I think it was a gradual turn that had already slowly happened when I moved to New York. I mean, I made some figurative abstract expressionist paintings, which was kind of like, I mean, I think they're like somewhat derivative of de Kooning's women, but they were men, and that didn't quite. I mean, it didn't quite satisfy me at all. So, I mean, there definitely was some kind of undercurrent of figurative elements, and then when I moved to New York, that began to be more prevalent, and then I think it got kicked over the edge after 9/11, because I didn't feel that I could. I don't think I felt that I could address that situation with abstract work at all. For myself, I'm not. I mean, this is all part of an internal dialogue. It's not something that I can. I mean, I'm not.
You're not prescribing.
I'm not lecturing anybody about anything, right?
Do you think that New York will remain the place where you are most likely to find your kind of, or develop your voice as an artist? I mean, we all are wondering and worrying and having anxiety about the future of this city. And what are you thinking about your own place here?
I don't know. I mean, I think the very cosmopolitan aspect of this city will always make it a very fertile cultural environment. So the question is whether that is going to be retained, right? So I mean, New York can go and be at the edge of annihilation, like in the 70s, or everybody but the white, waspy, wealthy people will be pushed out by the continuing rise of housing prices, and then we lose that. But so I don't know. I hope we can retain that.
So you're more worried about New York's economy returning to where it was before COVID than you are worried about sort of the economic future of New York as this global city. So we probably need to wrap up, but I didn't prepare a question about this, but if you want to say anything about the show that you're in now, Peter's works are some of his work that was in the QCC show, I think, and including, are any works that weren't in the QCC show on display?
I think there are two paintings that were not in and they show the painting of the roses with the eye, and which was the other one, and the painting of a hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
These paintings are on display at the Lithuanian, is it called the Lithuanian Cultural Center, as part of a larger show addressing the theme of kind of actually isolation, loneliness, embodiment during this throughout the pandemic. So it's actually a really interesting show, and Peter's work is part of what makes it so interesting. And it will be up through the end of November.